and I would like to welcome everyone to this session on language activities and the new course of study with Mark Fennelly. And I will let you have at it, Mark.
Okay, so I guess I should just go straight into my PowerPoint. Does that everybody see that? So my name is Mark Fennelly. I work at Shikoku University, and I'm here today because I was a member of one of the committees that created the new course of study for elementary school English, and as a result of that, it influences junior high school, and also involved in committees creating Let's Try Weekend that were based on the course of study, and now I work on textbook materials for New Horizon and the like. So I feel as the government has not yet managed to put the English version of the course of study on the ministry's homepage, that it's kind of my I feel kind of responsible to kind of get the message out a bit there about what's the what it means and stuff like that. So I'd like to cover a little bit about the course of study today. So just for those of you who are maybe not very long in Japan, the Ministry of Education, which is often called MEXT, produces the course of study, which is national content for Japan. And it outlines pretty much everything that's taught in schools, which they update every 10 years or so. The recent elementary school one just started this year. And textbooks in Japan are based on the course of study, and the only textbooks approved which follow the course of study are approved by MEXT. So at present, there are 7 textbook companies for elementary school English. Let's Try, which is used in 3rd and 4th grade, is not a textbook. It's produced by the Ministry of Education because it's just teaching materials, because foreign language activities are not an official subject, so you're not required to use the text if you don't wish to. But it's made with tax money, so we recommend that people do. Just a bit about background. When they're changing the course of study, the government tends to try and think about not so much about what the situation is today, but what the world or Japan is going to be like for the students who go through the school education system. So when we were looking at changing the course of study, you're thinking about what kind of abilities and competencies are going to be needed for students who are going out into the world and between say 2030 and 2050. And with the aging population and increases in globalization, the society is changing. You can see the number of foreign residents in Japan is increasing, a lot of Asian people coming. This is also related to the population changes, because the amount of people who are working age in Japan, the ratio is going down, so they need other people to come in and do the jobs that Japanese people don't want to do. So a lot of Asians are coming in, and that number is going to be increasing in the future. However, when Japanese companies are looking at globalization, the question of would you like to work overseas in these kind of surveys, a large number of workers do not want to work overseas, and one of the reasons for that is that they quote that they lack confidence in English. And so, for the economy for Japan, the government's a little bit worried about this lack of confidence in English among workers. So looking at things like TOEFL and TOEIC, Japan unfortunately doesn't rank very highly, especially compared with South Korea, Taiwan, and China. They do very poorly on these kind of TOEIC or TOEFL. This is TOEFL for 2017, but obviously, like countries like Singapore and India are second countries which use English as a second language, not as an international language. But Japan compares itself a lot with South Korea and Taiwan. So they're not really where they want to be right now. And those countries have introduced elementary school English from the 3rd grade from as far back as 1997. So Japan is quite a way back from, is a little bit behind in doing that. Government goals under the previous course of study were for junior high school kids to achieve grade 3, about 50%. They were aiming for 50% of junior high school kids to get Eiken, the step test, grade 3 by the time they graduate, or high school kids to get pre-2 by the time they graduate. And they never achieved that. They got stuck at about 36.1 or 36.4%. So the government was hoping to improve English levels with the new course of study. from Europe, SFAR has also influenced Japanese education, and the SFAR comes from Europe about how you compare languages, and now the Japanese government uses these A1 to C2 figures for their language attainment goals. And they also switched to using these kind of can-do type statements for what they want the students to be able to do at different levels. Another influence of this, sorry, I just pushed something wrong. Oops. Can I just stop for a second? Sorry about that. Having some issues with my PowerPoint. So anyway, SFAR kind of came in, and the government wanted to look at changing from looking at spoken interaction as being and production as being two separate skills within the 4 skills. So up until then, they were always thinking of just having the 4 skills, but now they put out their statements as being spoken interaction and production being 2 separate things. Production being more having more time to kind of sort out your information, and it should be more organized than something that's a bit more impromptu for interaction. Comparing the SFAR with tests that they use a lot in Japan, such as Aiken and stuff, you would see that someone with Aiken, maybe Nikyu, would be in the B1 level, with Jonikyu would be in the B2 level, perhaps. Okay, so implementation of English into elementary school in Japan has been through these 4 stages, and beginning with research schools. And at each stage, there's been problems that needed to be addressed. Most recently, it moved from once-a-week classes in 5th and 6th grade to moving to having required as an official subject from 5th and 6th grade starting this year. Before implementing the new stage 4, there were surveys done about the problems with stage 3, and some of those surveys have shown that students have got to like English more, and that students their attitude to using English or their ability to get used to English or to be able to communicate a little bit has been seen to go up. But there was a big issue with the fact that when asked, students who under the previous course of study had not studied reading and writing at elementary school were actually answering the question saying that they had found the reading of the alphabet and writing of the alphabet the most useful thing from elementary school and junior high school, even though they hadn't learned it. So this suggested that there was a huge gap between elementary school, which under the previous course of study had only dealt with the oral language at elementary school, and there's a lot of emphasis on reading and writing in junior high school. So the gap was seen to be a big issue, and that's one of the things that was addressed under the new course of study. Looking at this, it shows that elementary school starting this year, 2020, the new course of study for junior high school will be beginning next year in April. So the new textbooks will be probably already available to be seen, but they will be used from next April. And then from junior high school the year after that, and senior high school, sorry. The concept for the new course of study is based on these 3 pillars, and that's one is knowledge and skills of what the students know and what they can do, and then how they can apply that. And that's one of the big things that is emphasized under the new course of study: the abilities to think, make judgments, and express themselves, critical thinking type emphasis under for all subjects, not just for English, but it's one of the things that's being emphasized under the new course of study. And it's hoped that they will be able to help students to interact with the world in the future. So this is the kind of image for the new course of study. Of course, active learning, recently under the new course of study, they changed it. Instead of saying active learning in katakana for teachers, they've put it into Japanese as being proactive, interactive, and deep, so that people don't think that just having pair work and group work makes you have active learning. It needs to be a little bit deeper than that. The new changes in English in the new course of study start off with foreign language activities in the 3rd and 4th grade, with English as a subject in the 5th and 6th grade, twice-a-week classes. Junior high school will be required to have classes all in English, primarily all in English, and the high school will also be conducted in English. And university entrance exams and the Kyoto test, the new Kyoto test, will be changing how they do tests to emphasize critical thinking skills more. So the university exams from this year, from next January 2021, are going to be changing. They had intended to include speaking aspects, but they kind of messed that up. So far, they were going to use Aiken and TOEIC and things like that, but they kind of messed it up. So they're not going to do that yet. But they have increased the weighting in listening, and there's an hour-long listening test in the January 21 test this coming up. And also the writing sections are going to require the students to write things that require them to think and express themselves instead of just repeating, grammar and vocabulary. This is the goal of the government. So if you look at the CEFAR goals, that under the previous course of study, they were expecting students to be within the A1, A2 CEFAR ranks. But under the new course of study, they're expecting all students to reach B1 by the time that they graduate from high school, which means under the Aiken system of having Aiken Niku by the time you graduate from high school. This is the unofficial translation of the course of study. One of my jobs working for the government was to help translate this, and I was told that about 2.5 years ago or longer that it was going to be put up on the homepage, but it hasn't made it there yet. So this is still yet to be official. So anyway, the terminology is probably going to be something similar to this, but there's just 2 points I'd like to talk about today. One is the language activities, which I'll come to later, and the other is the perspectives and approaches of communication. These 2 points, the perspectives and approaches of communication and through language activities, are terminology that you can find for the goal statements in the course of study for foreign language activities, for 5th and 6th grade English, and for junior high school English. It's the same terminology used in each one. So what does that mean? If you check the course of study kaisetsu, which is an explanation of it, or you look at the Kenshu guidebook, which is available, they describe the perspectives and approaches of communication to be taking into consideration the nationality, culture, traditions, lifestyle of, and your relation to the person with whom you are communicating. And in order to do that, you need to make sure that the goal setting and situation is very clear for the students. So setting real situations that require real communication is one of the important things for classes underneath the new course of study. For example, if you ask children to introduce your hometown, you would need to not just say, okay, let's make a presentation, introduce your hometown. You'd want to just tell them, put it in context. Okay, who are you going to introduce your hometown to? Is it the ALT? Is it some children in another country? Why are you going to introduce your hometown? You need to kind of put that into context for the students. And for you, any of the people here today, imagine that you're introducing your hometown in Japan to your parents back home. And your goal is to try and make them feel that you are safe and happy. So what would you think to introduce? You'd probably have a whole set of things that you might want to tell them about Japan that would make them feel that you are safe and happy. However, if you are trying to impress your friends back home about how different life in Japan is and how cool you are for living in a country like Japan, you'd probably have a different content to your presentation. And of course, if you have a romantic interest that you would like to come and visit your hometown with your ulterior motives, then you would probably have a very different presentation too. So at the classroom level too, we need to be able to put the language in context for them. So through each language unit in elementary school or junior high school, we should be teach throughout the unit, deciding what the main language activity is and what are the students going to be exchanging with who and why. What is the goal? You're trying to create real goals at the classroom level. One of the other points was this through language activities. So what is a language activity? If I was to ask you what a language activity is, you may have different ideas, but under the new course of study for elementary school, junior high school, and high school, language activities have been defined as activities through which students exchange their own ideas and feelings. So if their students are just practicing language, if you've given students language, if you're controlling all of the language they use, then that is just practice. It's not actually language activity. So the government is moving away from the PPP style and having, students just using language in a completely controlled situation, is to have more emphasis on them digging up what other language they've learned so far in situations, many different situations, so that they get to try and use a variety of language in one particular activity. So please make sure that at the classroom level, or whether you're teaching or whether you're training teachers, to make sure that the activities the students are doing are based on that there is some aspect of the students exchanging their own ideas and feelings. Of course, in the third grade or something like that, it'll just be the students saying, oh, I like blue, and they be choosing the color that they want instead of being just repeating after the teacher or something like that. But as you come up through junior high school, that will lead to debate and things like that in the classroom. Small talk is one of the things that is kind of one kind of language activity that is often talked about these days. And there's two basic types. One is listening to longer kind of discourse of teachers. And hopefully that would be a situation where the teacher would contextualize language. And another is chatting with classmates. The main goals for these small talk type activities are to encourage language retention through using the same language in a variety of situations in regular classes. So there'll be these kind of chat times at the beginning of class, hopefully with language related to the wider goal of the unit, and also developing skills to keep discourse going and work on impromptu language use, which students have thought to be pretty poor at right now. These are just samples from the Kenshu guidebook, which is available on the Ministry of Education's homepage. And this would be like a teacher in the 5th grade introducing himself, but also trying to include the students a little bit. And if students are making mistakes with their English, hopefully he would be repeating it back to them and correcting their language through that. More emphasis on the teacher-led small talk in the 5th grade, and working on shadowing and reacting and follow-up questions to have the 6th grade students conducting more student-student small talk activities. These are just samples from the Kenshu guidebook, which is available on the ministry's homepage. At the classroom level, the Ministry of Education has put up a number of sample classes on their MEX channel, which is on YouTube, and I believe I'm safe enough to show these to you. So this would be a situation where a teacher is trying to encourage the students to talk about something, but
so
oral
you think today is cold? It's cold? Cold? You think cold? Oh, it's also, yeah, but it's winter, right? It's winter. How about in Australia?
In Australia, now is summer.
Summer, it's winter, okay? So we have 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter. Yeah, now is the winter. So winter vacation. Jake sensei,
Yes.
tell me about your winter vacation.
My winter vacation.
Yeah.
I went to Udo Shrine with my mother.
Oh, Udo Shrine with your mother.
With my mother. My mother came to Miyazaki from Australia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was it?
How was it? It was lucky.
Lucky? Why?
I enjoyed throwing lucky stones. Do you know lucky stones?
Yes.
I made it 3 times.
Yeah, show the lucky stone.
3 times.
This is a lucky stone.
3 times. We also ate thin slice of pork in hot water and sauce. Do you know what this is? Yes?
What's this?
Shabu shabu.
Shabu.
We ate shabu shabu. It was very delicious. Very delicious.
You
So So in this way, there would be hope that the teachers which have this kind of discussion supported with some real pictures, and it's hopefully talking about things that are real. And then the students will be asked to talk about their own winter vacations. And this particular unit, they're actually going to be talking about their best memories in elementary school, but they're using that as a warm-up to get into the topic. So that it's not just the students are not just repeating and stuff from the teacher, but they're listening to teachers talk about something real, and then they're being asked to try and talk about something real themselves. Of course, immediately the kids are not going to be able to say something that's extremely complex, but you know, they're going to start working towards more complex dialogue. And
Excuse me, Mark,
yeah.
you've got 5 minutes left.
Okay. So under the foreign language activities and under the English part, there are the goals have been stated as knowledge and activities, abilities to think, make judgment, express themselves, and willingness to learn. And that's for both English and for foreign language activities. Unfortunately, the course of study is not yet available in English. But the emphasis of these language activities is I can't stress it enough, is that they want we're expecting, hoping for a quantum leap in quantum change in the teachers' attitude towards teaching, a move away from, especially the junior high school, a move away from learning about English, a move away from explaining English to letting the students, you know, that you practice some language, and so they practice some vocabulary, and you know, you do chants, you do games and things like that, but then you let them use that to express themselves through these language activities, where they're probably going to meet more new language and brush up on their knowledge and abilities. And this cycle, and go through this cycle, and hopefully they will be able to develop confidence to interact with the world. Okay, so I have about 4 or 5 minutes left, and I think if anybody, there wasn't that many people here, so hopefully that there'll be some people who would like to ask some questions or be involved. I would just a couple of things to finally talk about, that junior high school is changing. If you are involved in junior high school at all, please do check out the Bridge textbook, which is which was sent out to junior high schools to try and bridge the gap between the present textbook and the next one that's coming out in April. One with language, and two with the way in which they're hoping to teach. So, for example, you know, discussing, you know, if you had 1 million yen now, what would you do with the money and stuff like that? Talking about those kind of things, where the goal is obviously language, but we're not just going to be doing extensive grammar explanation. And also there's a big change in evaluation. So I'm gonna just let you know that there was a document that came out about elementary school and junior high school evaluation. Again, it's only in Japanese, but it's on the you can get to it from the website. So I would, if you have Japanese ability, I would recommend that you look at it. I'm gonna stop my presentation now, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to chat.
Thank you, Mark. And I would like to ask everyone to unmute themselves, and let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you. And if anyone has any question, please unmute yourself and you're free to ask. And Mary has a question.
Okay. Hi, my question is, you said earlier that Max's recommendation was for high school students to be able to pass ACAN Pre-2.
Under the present course of study. So
okay.
The new course of study, they're hoping that everybody will get to grade 2. But under the present course of study, they're aiming for 50% of students to get to Pre-2, but they haven't achieved that. So it's quite a huge leap. I mean, under the new course of study, they're going from aiming for 50% at Pre-2 to 100% at 2. So that's quite a large increase.
Yeah, I teach a large number of students who go to the best high school in Hokkaido, and everyone took the ACAN 2 test last year in the school, and it was like 70, 80% failed. And a week later, MEX announced, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, then, you know, they don't want data that doesn't really fit in with the stuff. But one thing that I do think that, you know, is good about the new changes is an emphasis on using language and a more emphasis on interacting with the content in the textbooks as opposed to just explaining grammar. And there's more and more emphasis on teaching in English at the junior high school and the high school level. So one of the new junior high school textbooks actually does not have a stated goal sentence or goal form in the unit. They learn, for example, you know, some grammar point through the unit, but it's not, they don't have like the target sentence at the beginning of the unit, which will be quite a big change for teachers, I think, to be starting with, you know, they like to start with a long explanation of grammar, I think, but they need to be changing that.
Okay, our time has run out. So if
Can I
anyone
just
would
ask
like to,
one quick? Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
You said that you have an unofficial translation of the course of study. I'm so sorry. I know you're going over time, but is there any possibility that you could share that unofficial translation? I'm teaching in a pre-service teacher program, the methods course to teach this, and it's really difficult with only the Japanese.
Yeah, I know. So I guess we have to go to a hangout room or something, and I can share
Yes,
I can give you my email address or something. We can share it
please
there.
go to a hangout room. Do you know how to do that?
No idea. But.
No.
Carol, go back to the schedule, go to the live schedule, and the very bottom of the live schedule, the last entry is Hangouts.
Okay.
And just go there, and the person working there will put you in a room together.
Okay.
So if you arrive at the same time, you should have no trouble.
Okay, I'm going to go to a hangout
stop
place
the
now.
recording now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mark.
So